All right, good morning. My name is Jeff Orrock here at the National Weather Service in Wakefield. Going to kind of cover the weather here for the rest of this week and into the weekend and a little bit of early into next week. Before we jump into the weather maps, just kind of take a big picture here, see what's going on currently. It's fairly quiet. You can kind of see the low level clouds here coming out of the east and northeast with those low level winds coming off the ocean with that northeast flow. And that's actually helping to generate some cloud cover. We'll say some alto Q, strata Q, cumulus clouds here across a lot of the state. And then further south, you see more of this westerly, southwesterly flow with higher clouds streaming across, southeast Virginia and northeast North Carolina. So you can see the two levels of flow here with really a lot of us under some type of cloud cover, whether it's the high level clouds, mid-level clouds, or some of this northeast flow starting to drain a lot of this stratocumulus. So fairly cloudy right now. As far as the current temperatures and what's going on weather-wise, it really is a nice day. See if this gear comes back. So generally, a north to northeast wind here, pretty much just around 10 miles per hour. So definitely when you get near the bay and the coast, these red numbers are your wind gust. So you're starting to see more 15 to maybe 20, 25 mile per hour wind gusts, here over the bay and parts of the coast. So a little bit more breezy over the peninsulas, eastern shore, Hampton Roads. But once you get inland, definitely a much lighter wind. Back in the mountains, maybe a little bit of wind here, getting up to 10 to 15 miles an hour. But temperatures are really nice, generally in the 60s in the west and the 70s in the east. So very pleasant, still fairly dry. The humidity hasn't started to spike up too much yet with that northeast flow. It is going to increase a little bit Friday and Saturday, but not too bad. So weather pattern wise, we'll kind of step through what's happening, with the weather pattern and what's going to drive our weather. So we'll start out with this afternoon. And what you're noticing is really that strong high pressure that's sitting there, well off of Nova Scotia, just nosing down the eastern seaboard. And there is a little bit of a wave of low pressure that's developing along a stalled cold front way offshore. It's out over warmer water. And so that's allowing this little area of low pressure to develop. It's going to stay really far enough away where it's not going to be a weather maker for us. All it's doing is really kind of reinforcing that northeast wind with that flow between the high over Nova Scotia and the low off the Carolinas, just kind of reinforcing this northeast wind and locking it in for today and even into tomorrow. So by the time you get into tomorrow morning, you kind of see this little weak area of low pressure staying well offshore, lifting to the north, still some high pressure ridging, down here into parts of Virginia. So it's going to be maybe a little bit lighter wind tomorrow, but still a consistent northeast wind here across the region, especially the bay and the coastal waters. So that's going to keep things bumped up. As we get into Saturday evening, again, the low pulls away. And then by Saturday morning, what you notice here is you do have a front starting to kind of approach from the west, maybe getting into the far western parts of Virginia and southwest Virginia Saturday morning. It's not going to be a super fast moving front, so it's going to take a good bit of the day to get all the way across Virginia. And really, we don't expect it to reach the coast until quite a bit later on Saturday night and into early Sunday morning. Generally Saturday night. You do also see a little area wave of low pressure, another one forming here near Wilmington on Saturday morning. And that one's also going to lift north. So that might allow us, between that little low pressure forming along the Carolina coast and this front coming through, that might enhance the chance for showers, especially across southeast Virginia and northeast North Carolina, more like as you get into Saturday. But we're not expecting a big rainmaker out of this at all. So none of these systems are really particularly impressive. You get into Sunday, and you really notice that cold front has blasted offshore. Strong high pressure is building in across the area. So Sunday is going to see a big change in conditions, much drier. You'll see temperatures dropping dramatically as you get that front that gets forced offshore. You get into Monday, again, high pressure really dominates Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, just high pressure locked in here across the mid-Atlantic and parts of New England. So going to result in a very pleasant end of the weekend for Sunday, even though it may be a little bit breezy. And then next week looks like it's going to be pretty dry, and we'll talk about that as well. So kind of just jumping into it, this is really all the precipitation we're expecting, really, and that's really mainly going to be Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. And so you see here, it's mostly along maybe eastern shore, southeast Virginia, northeast North Carolina, and you're only talking 1/10 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. And you get inland, you're talking about a trace to maybe 1/10 of an inch. So, this is not a big rainmaker, despite the fact the front's coming through and we'll see a little bit of humidity. It's just that northeast wind that's driving today and tomorrow ahead of the front is just not going to allow moisture to really return to give us a lot of widespread rainfall, especially as you get away from the coast. So our best chances of rain really are going to be along the coast as that system tries to push through. So this is what we're looking at. Basically, this is the Thursday through Saturday rainfall totals across the entire region. And again, most of this rain is really more geared towards, I'd say, Saturday evening. And again, not much. I mean, Richmond, maybe you get 1/10 of an inch. A lot of the areas, 1/10 of an inch or less, are dry, with a little bit more, maybe up to a 1/4 inch by the time you get down here, towards parts of near the Albemarle Sound. Hampton Roads, probably 1/10 of an inch, maybe you get a 1/4. Not a lot of rain. Sunday through Tuesday, nothing. It's that high pressure in place, just going to be very, very, very dry as you get into early next week. So this kind of breaks it down day by day. And so again, temperatures, pretty pleasant. Highs today generally in the mid to upper 70s, maybe a few near 80s, a little bit warmer on Friday and Saturday ahead of that front. So we see a few more upper 70s to low 80-degree readings. And then by the time you get into Sunday, when that front comes through, the highs really pretty much low to mid 70s. And in fact, if you look at the low temperatures, we're actually seeing some mid to upper 40s showing up for low temperatures inland like Emporia, Farmville, getting into Louisa. Some pretty cool temperatures, even getting into around 50 here in South Hill. So some pretty cool temperatures really expected, as you get into Sunday, Monday with the overnight lows as that behind that front. So really pleasant, obviously no heat, just basically temperatures on average really kind of below normal. Rainfall wise, really not expecting much for today. I mean, you see here on Friday, we do have some very small chances of rain, 15 to 20% chances of rain, which we call that isolated, showers. Possible here tomorrow afternoon, but not a big deal. You see the better chances here after 12 o'clock on Saturday. So Saturday afternoon, early Saturday evening, you're looking at maybe anything from, 30 to 40% chances of precipitation across a lot of the area. Obviously highest down here at 40% down here over North Carolina, near Corolla, closer to the coast, Elizabeth City, also about 35% along with Edenton. So again, not a washout on Saturday by any means. Just going to be maybe some scattered showers that kind of pop up probably later in the day. If I had to plan it out right now. And so it'd be late Saturday, maybe Saturday afternoon, evening, we get a few little passing showers. And then Sunday, it looks like it's going to be dry, as well as Monday. And again, we already talked about into next week. So just a very small opportunity there for rain. So, we have seen some really beneficial rain. We saw Debbie, we saw some flooding and heavy rainfall, not too long ago across central Virginia. And so that's really kind of helped keep the drought at bay. But the western parts of the state, we're still, in that moderate to even severe drought here in a few counties. So the fact that we're getting back into a dry spell here for a while, we might start to see over the next couple of weeks the drought starting to expand, especially in the west, and starting to maybe edge its way east. So stream flow wise, you can kind of tell the areas that have not seen a lot of beneficial rain. So parts of Southwest Virginia, stream flows are still running in that 10 to 24th percentile, or even the red is the less than 10th percentile. So you kind of see where the stream flows have not recovered over parts of Virginia, where when you get across central Virginia, northern Virginia up through here, we've had a lot of good heavy rain. And so we're really in good flows here. So it's just, we're going to have to watch this and see how these stream flows start to kind of maybe slow down as we get into a dry spell here over the next couple of weeks. And of course, North Carolina, if I go back to the drought monitor, there's no drought conditions down there in North Carolina. I'll pull Maryland over here so we can kind of see what's happening in Maryland. So in our portion of eastern shore of Maryland, it's just considered abnormally dry. You got to go back towards the mountains there in western Maryland to kind of get into more severe, even a little bit of extreme drought, but more severe drought in the west. And that lines up with what you saw there in Virginia as well. So we'll keep an eye on this and see how things progress, especially in the west over the next 2 to 4 weeks if we continue to stay dry. Shifting gears here a little bit onto the marine side, it is a bit breezy out there. You saw those winds along the bay and the coast. So the orange represents small craft advisory conditions. You get into the reds, and that's where you're getting into maybe waves of about maybe 4 to 5 feet on the bay. And then maybe wind gusts, on the ocean, maybe getting into about, 8 feet or so. So 8 feet way offshore, but generally small craft advisory conditions here across the bay and all the coastal waters, even into the James River here for today. Notice that Friday, the bay is more yellow, so the winds decrease a bit, where it's going to be more like around maybe 15 knots, maybe a few gusts of 20, but the winds do decrease tomorrow, even though they stay out of the northeast. The coastal waters are still orange for small craft advisory conditions, mainly because the waves are going to stay up at 5 to 6 feet. With that continued northeast wind, even though the wind's going to decrease, so let's say around 15 knots or so, it's a long fetch and it's already kicked up out there. So the seas are going to stay 5 to 6 feet. And that's why you see the small craft advisory orange lit up for all the coastal waters. For Saturday and Saturday night, it's lighting it up orange again for the bay, showing those winds picking up on the bay, and even the river here, the James River, York, and Rappahannock for Saturday. This is mainly late in the afternoon. I'll show you the winds are actually going to be pretty, I want to say weak, but they're going to be much weaker during the morning and early afternoon hours. But that front's going to push through probably sometime after about 5 o'clock, sometime 4 or 5 o'clock. That front's going to start to push through and kind of blast through the area. So that's going to pick those winds up, I'd say late afternoon and early evening here on Saturday. So the small craft conditions here, especially on the bay, is really geared towards the latter part of Saturday. And of course, the coastal water is still maintaining that 5 to 6 foot seas. Those northeast gusty winds will continue a little bit into a Sunday, especially Sunday morning before they start to decrease Sunday evening. So that's why you see a lot of orange on the map here. But by the time you get into Monday, you don't see really anything. And the winds really fall out and conditions start to calm down quite a bit as we get into early next week. This is showing you the peak winds here over the next 3 days. So this is that surge that's going to be coming down with that front, basically getting into Saturday evening, Saturday afternoon. So it could get up to about 27 knots with that surge with the front, maybe getting up to 28 knots offshore. You see a gust here of 30 knots, maybe well offshore. So going to be a good little surge of wind here with this. It's kicked up now on the bay at around 2 to 3 feet. When that front comes through Saturday evening, could bump up to about 4 feet. The coastal waters right now are averaging about 5 to 7 feet, and that's going to kind of continue with that northeast wind for a while. So the ocean waves are going to stay kicked up. So here's your breakdown in the winds about every 6 hours or so. So you see that continued northeast wind today, sustaining around 15 to 20 knots, gusting to 25. Winds do decrease here a little bit on Friday. See that northeast wind, still northeast, but it's around maybe 10 to 15 knots here. Maybe you get some gusts to 20, but mostly it's just going to be around 15 knots out of the northeast on Friday. Still going to keep the bay a little bumped up and the ocean bumped up, but the winds aren't going to be as strong. Notice here on Saturday morning, the winds are much lighter. East wind here around 5 to 10 knots on Saturday. And the winds really don't start to pick up here until you get that northeast wind with that second front. The winds pick up here. It's going to be later on Saturday, probably I'd say 4 o'clock or later, depending on where you are, which front's going to kind of come in directly from the west. So the winds pick up late in the day Saturday. So Saturday morning on the coastal waters and in the ocean, on the bay, may not be too bad. Maybe an opportunity here where the winds are lighter and then they do pick up later on Saturday, and then they blow pretty good all night Saturday night and into early Sunday morning. But then by Sunday afternoon, the winds do start to fall off again, and then Monday is much weaker. So kind of an up-down situation with the winds where, we're up right now. We go down Saturday. We come back up briefly Saturday, late afternoon, evening, and into Sunday. Then we start to come back down again Sunday after Sunday evening and into Monday. So just kind of an up-down situation with the winds. And again, the waves are a little bit kicked up right now. Ducks, forecast at 7 feet, Chincoteague 6 feet. So we're running about 5 to 7 feet out there now. And those ocean waves persist into Friday. And then the bay is going to be up and down a little bit with the winds, strong to just today. They come down a little bit on Saturday, allowing the waves to decrease, but then the waves kick back up again on the bay with that front, Saturday, late afternoon and evening and into early Sunday. So no gales, just some up and down winds here with small craft advisory conditions. So because of that, with that northeast flow, that we're not really seeing any tidal flooding, but folks might be noticing the tides are running a little bit elevated. They've been a little bit elevated the last few days. Right now for today, we're really not seeing the tides getting up too high. They're going to be a little bit higher here on Friday as that northeast wind persists. So the areas in yellow just show you where right along the water's edge, you might see some water kind of starting to maybe flood along the edges of the waterfront, coming up maybe about a half foot above, above the shoreline, things like that. So that persists a little bit into Saturday and into Sunday. the tide should be starting to go back down a little bit, and we shouldn't see as much of that, we call it nuisance tidal flooding. And this is all really pretty shallow flooding. It's not even reaching minor flood levels. It's just telling you the tides are going to be elevated here for Friday and Saturday, and they should start to go down a little bit for Sunday. So just some above normal tides, but not causing us any issues. Because of that northeast flow, and it's being persistent, the ocean, like I said, it's kicked up. And so we've got some rough surf conditions, high risk of rip currents for today. It goes into tomorrow. Looking at the rip risk, I looked at the models, extending it out into Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, even though the winds decrease briefly, you still have that wave energy coming out of the northeast, and the models are still showing breaking waves of 3 to 4 feet on Saturday. So even though the winds are lighter, it's been blowing out in the ocean for so long, the surf is going to stay a little bit kicked up. So we're still going to see that high risk of rip currents on Saturday, despite the weaker wind. And then, of course, that front comes through, the winds pick up again Sunday. And so obviously Sunday it's going to be rough out there and getting, holding that 3 to 4 foot breakers. So it's just going to stay pretty rough out there for a while. And we're just going to keep this high risk of rip currents here along the coast for some time. The tropics, there's a lot of things out there that the Hurricane Center is monitoring. Obviously, all these little X's and areas of yellow are potential development. But right now, everything looks like it's going to be really low. So, the area that's off our coast that they're showing as an X is a front that's stalled out there with that wave of low pressure along it. So that's really a subtropical system. It's not really truly tropical. It's obviously moving off to the northeast. They got this little system here, this wave saying it could develop, a little, in this region here within the next 7 days. We got that big high pressure sitting over us. So we're looking like we're going to be pretty dry and protected here for a while, but they're tracking more systems and disturbances out there. Just nothing right now looks like, that's going to develop anytime in the next 7 days. So looking ahead to the next 6 to 10 days, like we talked about earlier, with that, cool high pressure coming down and dominating the early part of next week and into the middle part of next week, the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook is going to be basically below normal. But with that high pressure, it's cool. And so it's going to keep temperatures below normal, and as well as the precipitation, it's going to keep precipitation below normal for the next 6 to 10 days. So, looking way out, conditions stay, cool, and they stay relatively dry going out to the future. So that's the end of today's briefing, and I'll stop the recording